And while you're waiting, I'm going to invite you to enjoy a short video that gives you a flavor of a day in the life of our middle school. So you can enjoy that. It's just a minute long, and that'll give other people a chance to join us.
Hold on.
Okay, so that was just a very brief taster of a day in the life of our middle schoolers. So good evening again, everyone. I think a few more people have joined us, and I'm sure we will have a few more, but we'll get started now. So good evening. My name is Malika Ramdas. I'm the Director of Admissions at UWC. And this evening, I am joined by my colleague, Katie Phantom, who is our Deputy Director of Admissions, and also Hans Schellekens, who is our teacher of Dutch at the college. So I'm going to just go through our program this evening and tell you a little bit about the format, how we will be organizing the session. So we're going to have sort of a three parts to the program. Katie and I will first give you an overview of the college and tell you a bit about our holistic learning program and what the learning in the middle school looks like, and as well as tell you about how the admissions process works for students applying from HSL. And then we will hand over to Hans, who will talk to you about the Dutch language and culture program and everything that he's busy involved with the students who come into the college from HSL. And then we will go into a question and answer session at the end. And at that point, we are going to invite you all to put your cameras on. You can unmute yourselves, ask us your questions, and you can ask your questions either by just raising your hand to tell us that you have a question and we'll invite you to ask your question. Or if you're more comfortable with putting questions into the chat button at the bottom of your screen, you can also do that at any time during the session. And we will then go to the questions in the chat as well during our question and answer session at the end. So that's what the evening looks like. We also have, as part of the presentation, a virtual tour, which we will be playing for you. And we really regret that at the moment, we cannot have you on campus to have this evening event on campus. But I have an exciting piece of news for you, which is that we will be offering you very soon an on-campus tour opportunity on a Saturday, which Hans has kindly offered to lead. And that will be on Saturday, November 6th. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later on. Okay, so with that, I want to, sorry, Christina, next slide, please.
Hold on. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Some issue.
Okay, we'll get to our next slide in a moment. I'm just going to tell you a little bit. There we go. Kurt Hahn took a little while to appear, but there he is now. So Kurt Hahn is actually the founder of the UWC movement. And we are really excited and proud to tell you a little bit about him. So he was the person who was sort of the brainchild behind a lot of really exciting educational innovations and experiments. And He's kind of credited as the founder of a number of different educational programs and schools, including some of the ones you see on this screen, like the Duke of Edinburgh Award, the Outward Bound program, the Round Square program, Schule Schloss Salem, and Gordonston. And he was a German Jewish educator and kind of the founder in terms of his ideals, the founder of the UWC movement. And one of the things he really believed in, particularly strongly after World War II, was that he felt that you could only really build a more peaceful world and a world in which we could further international understanding by bringing young people from different parts of the world to live and learn together. So that was really kind of the genesis of the UWC movement. And now the movement has grown over the years. So it was started in 1962 with the founding of the first United World College, that was the Atlantic College in Wales. And it's getting ready to celebrate its 60th anniversary next year. But we here in Singapore are celebrating our 50th anniversary this very year in 2021. Christina, next slide, please. The movement has now grown to include 18 colleges around the world. So it's really exciting to be part of this wider UWC movement around the world. And in fact, we have a UWC in the Netherlands, among other places. So that's the UWC movement now. And all of the colleges are united by the same mission. Next slide, please. And our mission has this very bold statement and bold ideal, which is that it's really talking about making education a force to unite people, nations, and cultures for peace and a sustainable future. And we take that mission really seriously. It informs every aspect of how the college designs its learning program, its educational offerings to students. And you'll notice that it's a mission that doesn't talk directly about getting students into good universities, though of course we do that. It's not a mission that kind of advertises that students will attain their potential, although we absolutely believe that they do and go a long way towards growing in really interesting ways during their years with us. It doesn't even talk about how students are necessarily going to benefit from their experience here in direct ways. But what it does talk about is really the idea of transformation, and transformation of the individual, but also a transformation in terms of the individual's impact on the world around them. And so that's really what UWC is all about. Next slide, please. So we at UWC SEA have kind of interpreted how this works in our educational program in the form of this, well, it's represented in the form of these 6 circles. And it all starts and ends with that mission. So we start with our mission and values, which you can see in that first circle. That then leads to our educational goal, which it's a little tiny to read, but I'll read it out for you. It says to educate individuals to embrace challenge and take responsibility for shaping a better world. That is in turn founded on the idea of well-being and learning principles, which are described in the third circle. And then that in turn is implemented through our holistic learning program, which is circle 4. And I will actually focus in a moment much more on telling you what that holistic learning program consists of, and talk to you about the 5 elements of that holistic learning program. And so that program then is designed to foster the skills and qualities that are part of what we call our UWC SEA learner profile, which you can see in circle 5. And all of this is intended to produce alumni who ultimately enact the mission as they go forward and beyond UWC into their lives after they leave us. So now I'm going to focus on that slide, sorry, on that circle number 4, which is our holistic education program. And it comprises 5 elements. Next slide. And here they are a little bit more visible on this slide. So we have a 5-element learning program that consists of academics, activities, outdoor education, personal and social education, and service. And I'll spend a little time talking about each of these elements. So the first one, and the one that occupies probably the most time in the student's day, school day, is of course academics. But it is important to note that for us, all 5 elements of the learning program are equally important. And all 5 elements are informed by what we call our concept-based curriculum, our concept-based learning style. And I'm going to actually play you a short video that explains what we mean by a concept-based curriculum. And that idea of having learning based around concepts carries through into all 5 elements of our learning program. So Christina, if you could play the next video, please.
What is concept-based learning? Concept-based learning is centered around big ideas. Ideas so universal that they transfer across place, time, and situation. Content is important, so students must acquire knowledge and skills within each discipline. But the ability to make sense of their knowledge and skills in the world around them is just as important. This doesn't happen by accident. Students are given a variety of experiences so that they develop conceptual understandings, significant ideas that transfer to new contexts. This ensures that they thrive in a complex and unknown future. The Uwcsea concept-based curriculum leads to the IB diploma in grades 11 and 12 and is developed from our mission. Our educational goal is that students embrace challenge and take responsibility for shaping a better world. To do this, they must develop higher order thinking skills and apply their learning to diverse situations. Because our community is so international and diverse, our students bring a wide range of experiences, knowledge, and skills with them when they join us. A concept-based curriculum allows them to connect their prior learning to our experiences at school, as well as develop deep understanding. How do we develop conceptual understanding in our students? Concept-based learning goes hand in hand with learners having a diverse and broad range of experiences. This is achieved through all 5 elements of our holistic learning program: academics, activities, outdoor education, personal and social education, and service. We explicitly plan for concept-based learning by asking conceptual questions and teaching through inquiry, exposing students to content that stretches and deepens their thinking, fostering dialogue and collaboration, asking students to generalize and apply their ideas to new contexts. Together, these experiences support the development of conceptual understanding in our students.
So hopefully that gave you a bit of an understanding of what we mean by a concept-based curriculum. And that's really important because it facilitates the nature of our learning community, which is obviously a very international and pretty mobile one. So we have students who leave after a few years at the college. We have students who might join us for a couple of years and then move on to a different country because families are relocating. Or we might have students who come to us from somewhere else and then finish up with us, graduating from UWC and then moving on to some other part of the world, either back to the home country for university or perhaps to do a gap year somewhere else, and so on. So one of the big advantages of a concept-based curriculum is that it ensures that transferability of the learning into a new context. And we have found that students coming to us from all different kinds of educational backgrounds are still very, are really able to transition quite easily into the concept-based program because they're learning about things like, for example, migration. So that's the concept. They might use a particular case study in order to understand that concept. but the learning is still around the conceptual understanding of migration as a concept, and they might be studying that with a case study in Southeast Asia, they might be studying that with a case study in Europe, or whatever. So it's not a fixed set of content, and also it gives teachers the wonderful ability to shape how that education is delivered in ways that make sense in terms of what the class wants to learn about. And often students have agency in picking the kinds of things they want to learn. Increasingly so as they get older, of course. So next slide. Now, I'm going to focus a bit more specifically on middle school. And of course, middle school is an important bridge between primary school and high school. And it's really set up to kind of help students gain more and more of that independence as they move through the middle school years. And grade 7, which is the year that our HSL students come into when they're completing their group 8 class at HSL, is really kind of the sandwich year, if you like, in which students are becoming increasingly independent and responsible for their own learning. And it's then moving them into that grade 8 year, which for us is the last year of middle school before they then become high schoolers. So it's a nice gentle easing into the middle school experience and still giving them enough time before they go into high school. So specifically in middle school, next slide, students are learning a variety of core academic subjects as well as specialist subjects in things like drama, music, art, and they also have physical education and life skills as part of their program. Hans will later talk about how the Dutch program fits in with all of this, but you can see here that there's really there's a breadth of subjects, and students are engaged with those subjects in their class. So the class learns together in all of their core subjects, and then they move around. So in middle school, they're already gaining that independence of having to do some moving around. So they are in their classroom, but they're also moving around to their specialist subject classes. And that way as well, they're gaining more and more independence even around campus. Next slide. I'm now going to spend some time, but again, quite quickly, just giving you a flavor of the nature of those other 4 elements of our learning program. And the one that is super exciting for all students, and indeed for all of us who work at the college, is the activities program. Because we are a big school, we are able to offer an incredible range of activities, next slide, which span lots of different realms or different kinds of activities. So we have all manner of creative activities. We have an incredible sports program, athletics program, as well as different activities that encourage students to develop their leadership skills. And I mean, honestly, the number of activities is incredible. I think when you're able to come onto campus, there are some lovely display boards that give you a sense of some of the activities that take place. And I will say that even with the COVID restrictions that of course we've all had to follow, as indeed, you know, you have at HSL, and we have a little bit further south in the island have had to follow at our campus. But nonetheless, the good news is that, you know, the vast majority of activities have been able to continue even through this past year. We have an incredible set of performing arts offerings at the college, or from, you know, the music program, dance, drama. There are something like, I think, you know, in a typical year, and yes, COVID has meant some adjustments to this, but in a typical year, something like 10 to 13 drama productions in the college, you know, music concerts. Again, yes, some of those have had to be curtailed or actually, you know, reimagined, I would say, during COVID time. So there have been some really great collaborative music productions that have happened online, but increasingly we're able to do more and more in person, and that's really wonderful. And again, the sports program is very rich and gives students lots of opportunities, not just to practice sport in competitive teams, although there are plenty of those, but also just to engage in recreational sports just for the fun of it. And there are opportunities for students to initiate their own activities and groups as well, which is also an important way of building those leadership skills. So next slide, please. I'm now going to talk a little bit about our outdoor education program. And I think this is the area where we've probably had the most questions around, well, you know, how have we managed to keep this going in the COVID era? The good news is that we have a dedicated outdoor education department at the college. So we don't outsource our outdoor education program to somebody outside. We actually have our own full-time staff who develop the curriculum and who are thinking about how that works in terms of a student's learning through outdoor education as they move up from one grade to the next. So it's really an articulated program. And what our team have been able to do really successfully is to again, kind of reimagine how that outdoor education experience will work. And now it is delivered through what we call a hyper-local program based here in Singapore. Of course, as travel becomes possible again, and there is more and more good news about that, thankfully, then we will progressively, you know, again, be able to have groups traveling overseas. But I think I want to emphasize that, sorry, next slide, Christina, if you would, is that our focus in the outdoor education program is on developing skills and qualities in our students through the experiences that they have. And so it's really about kind of developing personal identity, healthy relationships, and a connection to nature through the experiences that they have. And recently we've had middle schoolers report back really excitedly about some of the experiences they've had right here in Singapore, where, to be honest, many of them had not experienced some of these places and some of these opportunities because they were so used to getting on a plane and going elsewhere that they never fully explored the environment right here in Singapore. So that's actually been, I think, quite an important learning opportunity for the students. So that's just touching very briefly on what goes on in the outdoor ed program, but there's lots more information available on the school's website, and I encourage you to look at that. Next slide, please. So I'm now going to move to another super important part of our ethos and a core element of our 5-element learning program, and that's service. So it's really kind of at the heart of what UWC is all about. Part of our mission is peace and sustainability, and those ideas are really embedded in the way in which service learning takes place. So at UWC, service is not a one-off experience. It's very much about learning and engaging with, you know, understanding communities, understanding what a community needs, and then engaging with that in a way that is meaningful. And it's not just about giving things or making donations. It's about it's a two-way learning and exchange is how I would describe it. Next slide. So at UWC, service is kind of grouped into different kinds of service experiences that students have. So we have on-campus college service opportunities which take place, you know, right on campus, as you can see in that left-hand photograph. We have, you know, herb gardens, and students are planting and harvesting and doing things right there on campus. We have composting as a service. We have an incredible solar energy program, solar panel program that was actually initiated by our students. But we also have a very, very robust local service program where we partner with different community organizations here in Singapore. And some of these go back to almost as many years as the college has been in existence, which is, as I mentioned earlier, 50 years this year. And then we've got partnerships with what we call our global concerns groups, which are groups at the college that support NGOs that are working in different countries, primarily in Southeast Asia. So our students are learning about what those groups do. They are supporting those groups through awareness raising campaigns, as well as some fundraising campaigns here in Singapore. And as they get older, students then have an opportunity to do things like their project week in grade 11, where they might visit one of the NGOs and do, a volunteer week of working with that partner organization. So again, there's that idea of continuity and not just a one-off engagement. And finally, I want to talk about personal and social education. Next slide. Which is delivered in through the regular weekday and primarily through the mentor group experience that students have every day of the week, as well as through assemblies. And on the next slide, you'll see it's just kind of a flavor of the different kinds of topics that middle schoolers will cover or be exposed to through a variety of activities. They might have quizzes, they might have some fun games, some discussions, as well as presentations in assemblies and visiting speakers, but different ways in which they're really learning about some of these key skills and qualities to become independent and to get a sense of identity and well-being and understand things like, digital citizenship and goal setting, personal growth and development, safety, and things like that. So that's really, I know that was a bit of a whistle-stop tour of our 5-element learning program, but hopefully that gave you some sense of it. And next slide. I'm now going to kind of transition us to the second part of our program, which is really giving you a sense of how admission to the college works. But I want to start that by reminding everyone here that we are really proud and just so happy to have our special relationship with HSL, which has continued for many years now, where we are, where we consider ourselves your secondary school. And we hope you see UWC in that way as well. So this is a relationship that has been in existence for several years. And what it is the opportunity for students finishing their group 8 at HSL to come to UWC to continue their education, joining our grade 7 class, which is our middle school, part of our middle school program. And basically, we will guarantee placement at UWC to students coming from HSL into our grade 7. You do still have to meet our normal entry criteria, and in a moment, Katie's going to talk through what those are. But provided that is the case, then students are guaranteed a place at the college. So with that, I'm now going to hand over to Katie to walk you through how our admissions process works and also give you a sense of the timeline of the process specifically for HSL students. Over to you, Katie.
Thank you, Malika. Next slide, please, Christina. So as Malika has said, I've got the pleasure to talk you through sort of more pragmatic and logistical parts of how you apply to UWC SEA. So I hope we can give you a little bit of clarity as we move through these slides. Next slide, please, Christina. So we have entry criteria, just like every other school does. And our entry criteria is broken down into these areas. So what we look at when we're looking at an application form are approaches to learning. One of the most important areas that we're looking at in a student's application, are they engaged with their learning? Are they excited about their learning journey? We also look at academic attainment, but I do want to say we're not an academically selective school. However, we do have a rigorous program, so we do need to make sure that the students are able to thrive in that program. So we're looking for students who are typically achieving within the middle to the upper bands of their current school's attainment levels. But again, our ATLs, our approaches to learning, are very, very important to us as well. Then we're looking at a student's interest and involvement. Another important area is about where the student is taking advantage or potentially taking advantage of the opportunities that we have available. Are they looking to challenge themselves? Are they looking to take risks and grow through our activities program? And then for students who are applying for middle school, which our HSL students are, do they have an understanding of UWC? Do they have an appreciation of our guiding statements and a potential to engage in our mission? Thank you. Next slide, Christina. So what is considered when we're looking at application forms? So the school reports, so we're looking again typically at more at the approaches to learning rather than the attainment levels. Then we look at the EAL assessment. I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute, but we look at the outcomes of that EAL assessment and the interview outcomes. And then for grade 6 students, we ask the applicants, or grade 6 and above, we ask our applicants to complete what we call as a student statement. And we want to hear about the students themselves in this student statement. And it's usually one of the most interesting and informative documents that we have as part of the application process. And at this stage, I just want to give a top tip to parents. We like to hear the student's voice in this document, not the parent's voice. So please do allow your students the ability to express themselves in that student statement. And then we're looking at any other additional information about your family. So we're excited to understand how you might want to connect with us and what attracts you to UWC and what also attracts you to our mission and our guiding statements. Does our mission align with your family's mission as well? Next slide, please, Christina. So your actual application, how do you apply? So your application will be completed on our website. It's an online application, and we will be sending you the login details on Monday, the 29th of November, once we've received the list of interested families from the HSL school. So there's no need for you to apply any earlier than this. We will send you all the details about how to log on to our system to complete your application form. But if you wanted to, you're more than welcome to start to gather the required documents, so things like copies of birth certificate, copies of passports, school reports. Start gathering that, put it into some PDF formats, so you're ready to go when it comes to uploading all of those documents as part of the application process. Your deadline to complete this application process will be the 10th of December. And we'll show you into another slide in a minute, which has all of the information there. So don't worry too much about taking notes at this point. So you'll have approximately 2 weeks to complete the application process. So I touched on school reports. How many school reports would you need? So you need approximately 2 to 3 years of school reports and translated into English if necessary. And again, for students that are applying from grade 6 upwards, it's the student statement that we need completed by your student. And then if there's any additional information which might be pertinent to the student's application. So for example, if the student has an educational psychologist report or a speech therapist report, then we would need to have that as part of the upload documents as well. And then last but not least, the application fee to complete your application submission. Next slide, please, Christina. So this is the timeline that I just inferred earlier on. So today, Wednesday, the 27th of November, is our information evening. And then we ask that by the 22nd of November, please submit your interest in wanting to apply to UWC to HSL. And then once we have that list of names on Monday, the 29th of November, we will send you the login details to apply through our online application process system. 2 weeks later, 10th of December will be your deadline to complete your submission. And then during the week of the 17th of January, we will then send you the online EAL assessment information. So the students can complete that EAL assessment at any point after we send you the details, and at any time of the day. It's really up to them when they want to do it. But we're asking whether it's possible to complete that by the 1st of February in order to get the information back from the company that we use to do the online assessment. And then on Tuesday, the 8th of February, we'll invite you, hopefully, on campus in order to have your writing and oral assessment with our EAL coordinator. And then during the week of the 28th of February, we'll then be in a position to make those offers to you, which will be via email, is the initial email offer, and then followed up with all the documentation after that. And then during week of Monday, the 14th of March will be your deadline to accept that offer. So I think, Malika, we're sharing this slide deck with you. So that all that information will be there for you to refer to after this session. So thank you. Over to you, Malika.
Thanks, Katie. And actually, this timeline for the application process has already been shared with HSL. So, but as Katie said, we're actually also recording this whole information evening, which I should have mentioned at the beginning and I forgot. And we will send you a link to the recording of this session, just so you can remind yourself of what we said. And also, if you have friends who weren't able to attend today, but would like the information, then do refer them to that. So what we're going to do now is, as a transition from our part of the presentation to Hans's part of the presentation, we're actually going to show you our virtual tour of the Dover campus, and especially the middle school. It is quite long. It's about 7.5 minutes long, but we really want to give you an experience of kind of as if you were on campus. And for those of you who may have joined late, I did mention at the beginning that in addition to the virtual tour, you will have an opportunity very soon to go on a real tour of the campus, if you'd like to, on Saturday, November 6th. And Hans has kindly offered to tour the students. We are able to accommodate one student with an accompanying parent, with one parent. So you will need to keep that in mind, and we'll ask you to give your names to someone at HSL, who will then send us the names by Monday, and we will then send you kind of the invitation that you need to be able to come onto campus. But for now, sit back or go get yourself a top up to your drinks and enjoy this video virtual tour. And then we will hand over to Hans for his part of the presentation. Okay, thank you for hanging in there. And I hope you enjoyed our virtual tour. That would have taken at least an hour or more of walking around campus to show you all of those faces. So we did try and make it as compact as we could, but I appreciate your patience. Okay, so now it's my great pleasure to hand you over to Hans Schellekens, who is our teacher of Dutch, and he will talk you through the exciting offerings of the Dutch program. Over to you, Hans.
Thank you so much, Malika. Before I start, I just want to know if there's anyone in the audience, not my colleagues, but anyone else listening, who would prefer for me to continue in English. Otherwise, I will happily switch to Dutch. No objections to me speaking Dutch? Wonderful. Oké, dan weet ik jullie allemaal van harte welkom. Ik zag net al voorbij komen large group gatherings, dat die plaatsvonden in het Roy Bennett Theater. Was het maar waar, denk ik. Ik zou jullie veel liever live hebben gezien en zeker hier op de campus. Maar het zit er even niet in. Dus we doen het zo. Zoals gezegd, zoals Malika al 2 keer heeft gezegd, binnenkort hoop ik jullie op de campus te zien. Althans de kinderen en minstens 1 van hun ouders. En dan doen we die rondleiding alsnog live. Want het is toch iets anders. Het is heel on-Nederlands om op te scheppen over je eigen plek. Maar ik ben toch altijd heel erg onder de indruk. En ik werk hier al sinds 1997. Althans, toen werkte ik hier voor het eerst. Ik ben toen een tijdje weg geweest en ben teruggekomen in 2011. Maar ik werk hier dus al ongeveer een derde van mijn leven, zo niet langer. Oké, dat genoeg over mij. Ik wil iets vertellen over het Nederlands op onze campus. Next slide, please, Christina. Malika zei het al, Nederlands wordt gegeven van grade 7 tot en met 12. En grade 7 kun je zien als een soort brugklas. Malika had het er al een beetje over dat grade 7 een tussenjaar is hier ook in de middle school. Het is ook letterlijk het middelste jaar van middle school, want middle school begint in grade 6. Maar grade 6 is een beetje hetzelfde als groep 8. Dus als het goed is met jullie leeftijden, komen jullie hier in grade 7 terecht. En dat zou heel mooi zijn als dat lukte. Grade 7 en 8 is de middle school. Ik zal het vooral gaan hebben over de lessen in middle school, dus in grades 7 en 8. Maar het is wel goed om te weten dat vanaf grade 9 het Nederlandse onderwijs gewoon plaatsvindt tijdens de schooldag. In grades 7 en 8 is dat helaas niet zo, omdat Nederlands daar nog als extra vak geldt. Je krijgt dus, je zag al in het overzichtje dat je naast Engels ook een language other than English krijgt. Dat is op zich niet Nederlands. Ja, ook Nederlands, maar ook Spaans of Duits of Chinees. Of Frans bedoel ik. Niet Duits, Frans. Ja. Next slide, please, Christina. En hier zie je dat Nederlands in middle school in grade 7 op woensdag en vrijdag plaatsvindt. Ik laat jullie zo meteen een filmpje zien van een van mijn oud-leerlingen die iets vertelt over het Nederlands hier. Dan hoor je het ook eens van een ander namelijk. En grade 8 is van maandag en donderdag, is op maandag en donderdag van 3 tot half 5. Het is dus na school, tijdens de activiteiten tijd. Maar Nederlands geldt niet als activiteit, maar geldt wel echt als een schoolvak. En in de volgende slide, next slide please Christina, laat ik graag Julie even aan het woord. Please play.
Hallo groep 8 van de HSL, mijn naam is Julie Hoogwater en ik ga vertellen over de Nederlandse lessen op de UWC. De Nederlandse lessen zijn elke woensdag en vrijdag na school en beginnen om 2:50. Dus heb je 10 minuten om van je laatste les naar de Nederlandse les te komen. En de lessen zijn heel leuk en sociaal en je doet veel opdrachten samen en veel leuke spelletjes. In de les krijg je een boek en in dat boek zitten blokken en in elk blok zitten verschillende onderdelen. In een klas is ook een kleine bibliotheek en daarvan moet je vaak boeken uitlezen. En tijdens het Nederlands mag je ook trakteren als je jarig bent. En op vrijdag is Food Friday, dus dan trakteert de meester. En er zijn ook Sinterklaasloodjes, dus je gaat ook surprises maken. We hopen dat jullie snel te zien op de UWC.
Dankjewel, Julie. Thank you, Christina. Next slide, please. Oké, jullie zei het al even, we maken gebruik van een boek. Dat is dit boek op niveau voor de brugklas, voor de eerste klas. Er staat boven onderbouw, HAVO, VWO iets over die niveaus. Met name Nederlandse ouders, Vlaamse ouders veel minder, vinden het altijd belangrijk om te weten op welk niveau hun kind les krijgt. Het fijne vind ik aan het internationaal onderwijs is dat het niet zo heel erg ertoe doet. Dat we zeggen dat elk kind in principe op haar eigen niveau les krijgt. Maar, en dat is echt een groot verschil met Nederland, het is wel de bedoeling dat iedereen uiteindelijk 6 jaar hier op school kan doorbrengen en dan met een IB-diploma van school gaat. En met zo'n IB-diploma, dat in veel opzichten hetzelfde is als een VWO-diploma, maar in bepaalde belangrijke opzichten ook eigenlijk niet, kun je naar een universiteit. Maar een IB-diploma is ook weer zo flexibel dat je dat ook kunt halen, terwijl je dan zeg maar geen technische natuurkunde in Delft moet gaan studeren, als je begrijpt wat ik bedoel. Dus je kan er van alles mee, je mag er van alles mee, maar je hoeft er niet meteen van alles mee. Laat ik het zo samenvatten voor nu. De meeste kinderen die van de HSL komen, die doen trouwens heel goed Nederlands op HAVO- en VWO-niveau. Dat kunnen de meeste kinderen heel erg goed. Maar het is niet zo, en dat wil ik toch echt benadrukken, dat wij, als we kijken naar de academische prestaties van leerlingen, ons ook maar iets zouden aantrekken van de CITO-indicaties dat je HAVO-VWO zou moeten hebben of wat dan ook. Dat is echt gewoon niet waar. Het is best hard werken, dus het scheelt als je redelijk goed kunt leren. Maar het is vooral heel belangrijk dat je gemotiveerd bent om te leren. En dat je het leuk vindt om naar school te gaan. Natuurlijk begrijpen dat er andere leuke dingen zijn, misschien wel leukere dingen, maar je moet er wel een beetje lol in hebben. Oké. Next slide, please, Christina. We zagen al dat in de methode die we gebruiken er allerlei onderdelen aan bod komen. Dat zei Julie ook al. Dus fictie gaat over boeken lezen, daar kom ik zo meteen op terug. Verder krijg je grammatica, ja, het zal moeten. Spelling over taal, lezen en schrijven. Dat zijn dus gewoon alle onderdelen die bij het vak Nederlands horen. Veel van die dingen zul je herkennen als, dat hoort bij taal, bij mij op school. Maar sommige dingen hebben ook meer te maken met lezen of met literatuur. En je krijgt het boek bovendien ook digitaal. En daar zie je hier een overzichtje van. Dus je kunt huiswerkopdrachten, als je die al krijgt, gebeurt niet zo heel vaak, kun je die ook thuis maken op je computer. Hoef je niet te slepen met je zware boek en met je schrift. Oké. Next slide, please, Christina. Veel opdrachten gaan ook een beetje buiten het boek om. Dat zijn schrijfopdrachten of creatieve opdrachten. Er wordt in het internationaal onderwijs wat meer geschreven, denk ik, dan in Nederland. Klassen zijn ook kleiner, dus leraren hebben meer tijd om na te kijken. Maar er wordt ook meer belang aan gehecht dat je veel schrijft. En veel je eigen gedachten uit. Next slide, please. Aan het eind van elke toets, aan het eind van elke blok in het boek, het zijn er maar 6 per jaar, maar krijg je een bloktoets. Die tellen dus heftig mee. Ze zijn niet super moeilijk. Next slide, please. En daarnaast lezen wij elk jaar met de hele klas in elk geval in grade 7 de vroege lijsters. En in grade 8 de jonge lijsters. Dit zijn de vroege lijsters van dit jaar. Dus we zijn nu de kinderkaravaan aan het lezen van Anne Rutgers van der Loef. Prachtig boek. En die andere 4 titels lezen we dus ook als de hele klas. Lees je thuis, in de vakantie vaak. En dan krijg je in de klas allerlei leuke opdrachten daarover. Next slide, please. Dit zijn de boeken die we dit jaar lezen met grade 8. Dus dat zijn weer heel andere titels. En volgend jaar zijn die titels weer heel anders. Maar dit zijn ook vaak boeken die bepaalde actuele onderwerpen behandelen. Het kankerkampioenschap voor junioren, daar kun je je misschien iets bij voorstellen. Het meisje met de vlechtjes gaat over een meisje dat kanker heeft gehad. Het zijn dus vaak spannende, maar vaak ook wel relevante, dat we zeggen belangrijke onderwerpen die in die boeken worden besproken. En dus is het leuk om daarover te discussiëren in de klas en om het wat buiten de literatuur en buiten de taallessen te trekken. Next slide, please. Nou, de opdrachten die we doen naar aanleiding van die boeken die we lezen, dat zijn heel veel creatieve schrijfopdrachten, zoals deze. Bijvoorbeeld een brief schrijven aan een personage of een nieuwsbericht schrijven naar aanleiding van een boek. Next slide, please. Of we maken posters naar aanleiding van allerlei opdrachten en vragen van zo'n boek. Bijvoorbeeld De Bende van de Bok, een heel spannend boek van Reggie Naus. Next slide, please. Of je houdt een spreekbeurt naar aanleiding van een boek, of in je eentje of in een groepje, omdat je een bepaald onderwerp hebt onderzocht en dieper hebt uitgeplozen. Dus dat zijn eigenlijk heel erg leuke opdrachten en ik vind het leuk om dat soort opdrachten op te hangen aan de boeken die we lezen. Als het goed is, lees je meer dan 5 Nederlandse boeken in een jaar. Juich niet te vroeg, want het is wel de bedoeling dat je wat meer leest. En ook bij Engels zul je veel moeten lezen, denk ik. Dus als je echt helemaal niet van lezen houdt, dan hoop ik dat dat bijtrekt. Is vaak wel het geval. Next slide, please. Oké, aan het eind van elk jaar, dus van grade 7, 8, 9 en 10, maken we ook nog een diataaltoets. En met zo'n toets kun je een beetje afmeten hoe je zou scoren ten aanzien van je leeftijdgenoten in Nederland en Vlaanderen. En in de rest van de wereld. Dus afgezien van dat je bij mij gewoon goed onderwijs krijgt, kun je dat ook controleren, bij wijze van spreken. Door te zien hoe goed je taalvaardigheid is, je leesvaardigheid is. Of je woordenkennis een beetje stijgt of bijblijft. En of je spelling een beetje in orde is. Want ja, dat zijn toch belangrijke onderdelen bij Nederlands. Next slide, please. Behalve taal en literatuur besteden we natuurlijk ook, want dat is een onderdeel van het Nederlands onderwijs in het buitenland, aandacht aan Nederlandse cultuur. In Singapore zitten we natuurlijk op een heel bijzondere plek, te midden van allerlei koloniale geschiedenis. Denk aan Indonesië, maar ook bijvoorbeeld aan Malakka. Denk ook aan Sri Lanka, aan de Coromandelkust. Er zijn allerlei plekken, Deshima in Japan bijvoorbeeld. Er zijn allerlei plekken hier in de regio waar de Nederlanders in historische zin hun sporen hebben achtergelaten. En ook in Singapore vind je in musea en dergelijke daar allerlei interessante tentoonstellingen en dergelijke van. En als die er zijn, dan ga ik daar heel graag naartoe met mijn middle school leerlingen. Ik vind het ook altijd leuk wanneer er ouders bij betrokken zijn bij die musea, om dat te horen, opdat die mij kunnen helpen, zodra de corona-ellende weer een beetje voorbij is en we op excursie kunnen weer. In grade 9 bijvoorbeeld ga ik altijd met de kinderen een weekend naar Malakka, althans dat deed ik tot voor 2 jaar geleden. En in grade 11 gaan we zelfs een hele week met de Chinese nieuwjaarsvakantie naar Java. Maken we een prachtige route van Jakarta via Bogor naar Bandung, een theeplantage daaronder uit de heren van de thee. En we reizen door naar Yogyakarta, waar we de Borobudur en de Prambanan bezoeken. Het is een prachtige reis en natuurlijk heel erg relevant. En daar komt ook de koloniale literatuur die we bestudeerd hebben heel erg tot leven. Afgezien van natuurlijk dat het een ongelooflijk leuke bondingtrip is voor die kinderen. Maar dat zijn wel eens een beetje hoogtepunten die ik de afgelopen 2 jaar ongelooflijk heb gemist. Maar die hoop ik voor jullie generatie weer allemaal aan bod komen. Daar hopen we maar op. Next slide, please. Onder de Nederlandse cultuur valt ook de filmclub. 3 keer per jaar. Vroeger deed ik dat samen met kinderen van Language One. Dus kinderen die op de GES zitten of op andere internationale scholen waar Language One Nederlands aanbiedt. En hielden we die filmavonden op de Hollandse Club. Nou, onder deze omstandigheden lukt het niet, maar vorig jaar heb ik het gewoon hier op school gedaan. Je zag net in het filmpje het Roy Bennett Theater met dat prachtige gamelan instrumentarium. En in die zaal, dat leek ook een beetje op een filmzaal, houden wij alsnog 3 keer per jaar, als het lukt, onze Nederlandse filmclub. Volgend op een heerlijke pizza, vreedfestijn in de aula van die zaal. Hartstikke gezellig. Next slide, please. En daarnaast, Julie verwees er al even naar, gaan we in elk geval ook Sinterklaasloodjes trekken. De huidige grade 7's hebben ze net getrokken. We zijn opgewonden om voor elkaar surprises te gaan maken, gedichten te gaan schrijven, cadeautjes te gaan kopen. En dat vieren we in de klas. Hartstikke gezellig, hartstikke leuk. Nou, dat is zo'n beetje een kort overzicht van het Nederlands bij ons op school. Ik ga ervan uit en hoop eigenlijk ook dat er nog heel veel vragen zijn. Next slide, please. Maar in elk geval valt er meer over het Nederlands onderwijs te vinden op onze website met een speciale pagina voor het Nederlands onderwijs. Daar is ook een link naar onze schoolgids die als de sodemieter vernieuwd dient te worden, want het is nog de schoolgids, staat daar, zag ik vandaag, van 2019, 2020. Dus hij is vorig jaar niet vernieuwd om de een of andere reden, maar de tekst van nu, die zit in de pijplijn. Dus die staat over een week of 2, 3, hopelijk met nieuwe actuele plaatjes op de site. Mochten er vragen zijn die zo meteen niet beantwoord worden, dan kun je mij altijd aanschrijven op HSC, het adres dat je hopelijk volgend jaar kunt dromen. uwcsea.edu.sg. Oké. Ik dank jullie voor de aandacht. En dat is ook de tekst die hier nog onder komt. Next press, Christine, please. Ja, zie je wel. En dan is het nu tijd voor jullie vragen.